All right, we are getting started here. We're in chapter 29, continuing our view of participles. So this would be our, I think, fourth week on participles. We did the intro, and the last 2 weeks was looking at verbial participles, and this week we're going to emphasize adjectival participles. And so we'll kind of go back to a review again, but I want to emphasize a little more about adverbial that we haven't yet touched on. And then also we'll expand our understanding of how participles are used in an adjectival sense. And really, uh, when we think about a adverb modifying a verb, we could see a participle doing the same thing. When we think about adjective modifying a noun or pronoun, describing or limiting it, then or standing in place of a noun or pronoun in a substantival way, then participles can function the same way. The issue is, and the question is number one, is how do you recognize a participle? I mean, we've been going over that, and the good news is there's nothing new in terms of the adjectival participle relative to recognizing it. We've already gone through all the things you need to know to recognize and identify that it's in fact a participle. So this time, as we look at adjectival, we're going to be looking more functional, how it functions adjectively. But I do want to give a little more depth to adverbial, and that's really not in your grammar book. I want to kind of give you an opportunity or some knowledge base to think beyond elementary grammar and look more functional here. So we want to look at, again, a review. I want to give a little more emphasis on adverbial. We're going to move into adjectival. We'll look at whether or not, how do you know if it's functioning adverbial? How do you know if it's functioning adjectively? If it's functioning adjectively, then how do you know if it's functioning to modify or limit an adjective or stand in place of a noun, such as a pronoun or a subject or object kind of thing? All right, does that make sense? Are we okay, Sam?
Yes, sir.
All right. So let's do this. Let me clear this screen. All right, so let's talk about the adjectival participle. Let's talk about participle as a whole. We've already talked about a participle is a what? A verbal what?
I couldn't hear you. What'd you say?
So
a participle is a verbal. It's a verbal adjective.
A verbal adjective, yeah. Okay, yeah. So basically, it has two parts, right? Mm-hmm. All right, Jake, welcome aboard. We are just getting into it. Basically, we're kind of a quick review. Then we go into adverb, a little more about adverbial participles. We've looked the last 2 weeks on adverbial. We're going to focus on adjectival. From an adverbial perspective and adjectival perspective, they look the same. So you're not learning anything new in terms of form, or at least in terms of how to recognize a participle. But we are going to talk about how they function and how do you differentiate between adverbial and adjectival. So we just talked about, and fortunately, Sam confirmed that a participle is a verbal adjective, right? It has verb elements, it's tense and voice. It does not have it does not have person or mood. It also has adjectival components, case, number, and gender. And it can function one of two primary ways. That is adverbially, which we spent the last 2 weeks at, and I want to bring some more emphasis here, Jake, today. And then adjectively, and it's like any adjective, an adjective can modify or limit or describe a noun or pronoun, but it also could stand in place of the noun or pronoun. So a participle functioning adjectively can do the same. So we're going to focus on a little bit about that and a quick review. At least pretty much what we just said here. I won't spend much time, but I do want to emphasize we have participles in the present, aorist, and perfect tense. One other tense is only, depending upon if you count Romans 10 verse 18, I think. I think it's Romans 10 verse 18. No, Romans 8 verse 34. Depends on whether you count Romans 8:34. There's either 12 or 13 of these. What other tense of New Testament participle can we find? Present, aorist, perfect, and what else? We mentioned it last week.
Imperfect?
No, there's no imperfect participle. Good guess. Kind of running out of guesses, guys. It's only what tenses have we done? We've done the present imperfect was a wrong guess. Aorist, perfect. We're going to do next week. And what other tense are we missing?
Passive?
No, passive is voice, right?
Oh, that's.
Right. Keep guessing. So we have tense, voice, and mood. And then we have person and number, right? Person and number, first, second, third person, number, singular, plural. Tense, voice is active, middle, or passive. Mood is indicative, subjunctive, imperative. We don't have a mood. Instead, it's a participle. But we went over 5 tenses. There are 6 of them. We mentioned the 6th one is an optative. And we mentioned a present. Oh, we lost Jake. He didn't like the answer. The present, aorist, imperfect, future, and what other one? I think I just named it. Present, accidentally. Present, imperfect, aorist, perfect, and one other one. Not the past, not the present, but the
future.
There you go.
Sorry, Jake just sent a text, said it just kicked me out.
Okay. I didn't kick him out.
He said something it shows something went wrong. Sorry.
Okay. Well, it's recorded, so he can have access to it when he's able, I guess. So, all right. So, so like a verb, participles have a tense, right? And they're built on the present tense, the aorist tense, and the perfect tense. And there are about 12, maybe 13 New Testament future tenses. I'm going to touch on that next week. Just touch on it because there's only those 12 to 13. This time we're staying with the present and the aorist and the perfect. And we can also have a voice, an active, a middle, a passive voice. But unlike a verb, a participle does not have a mood or a person, right? And of course, time is in fact relative. Why is time relative? Sam, do you know?
Because the participles don't relate to time.
Well, they do relate to time, but it's just not an absolute relationship.
Mm-hmm.
It's an indirect relationship, right?
Indirect.
Okay, where do they get their time? What's the basis for their time? Their indirect relationship with time is with what?
The augment relates. The augment relates to time.
No. What determines the time of a participle when it's functioning adverbially? That's your clue. When it's functioning adverbially, what determines the time of a participle? I'm going to say it again. When it functions adverbially,
what verb?
The verb. Thank you. The main verb. Actually, after you're a genius.
Okay.
Okay. So it's the verb that determines the time, the relative time, their indirect time. It's a relative time to the main verb, right? And depending upon whether it's a functioning, if it's an imperfective, right? If it's in the present tense, if the participle's in the present tense, it's generally imperfective, which means what from time, or what kind of action. Excuse me, I've jumped from time to action. If it's imperfective, it's in the present tense, and it's normally referring to a continuous kind of action. That would mean if it's continuous and it's associated, it gets its time from the main verb. Samuel, think about this. If the present tense participle is imperfective in its aspect, its kind of action, which means it's continuing, ongoing, right? Then and its relationship with the main verb, what time would the participle represent relative to the main verb?
If it's present and it's ongoing?
Well, present tense would be imperfective kind of action, which would be an ongoing, and we normally use an ing. ending for the participles, right? But relative to time, what would be the participles time relative to the main verb? Before, during, or after the main verb?
After.
Okay, it's in the present tense. Its aspect is imperfective, meaning it's ongoing. So we normally translate with an ing ending, the participle, right? And the participle time is relative to or relative to the main verb. It's not going to be after the main
No,
verb.
then it'd be during.
During, right? The
Yeah.
present tense, right? Exactly.
Okay, I understand what you're saying now.
All right. Now move to the aorist tense for the participle and the main verb. Would the time relative for the participle relative to the main verb, would it be before, during, or after the main verb's time?
With aorist, it's after.
After, right? And it was typically translated using a perfective aspect, meaning undefined, right?
Yeah. Okay. Like after being done or something like that.
Exactly. Yeah. All right. Yeah, we'll get more into that later. Well, that's enough for now. All right. So time is relative to the main verb. That's the important point of this. Also, aspect, the type of action, is really the key for adverbial participles. It's the key to how we translate adverbial participles. In the present tense, it's some kind of ongoing action. And it's often the same time. The answers are right on the slide, by the way, if you look. It's the same time as the main verb, often translated while. Now, sometimes we'll translate it because. Why would we translate it, Jake, because instead of while? If the present tense participle associated to the main verb and it's not while, in other words, it's not temporal, why would we translate it because? Oh, we lost him again. Okay. All right.
I don't know the answer.
Well, think about it. No, I'm trying to get us to think. All right.
Yeah.
You could translate a present tense participle as something that's ongoing, associated with the main verb, right? You already said that. It's like while the teacher asked the question, Jake got off the internet.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be temporal related, time related, while he asked the question, right? So that's concurrent with the question, and Jake left.
Yeah, it's just stuck in that time of that question being asked.
All right. So, but we could translate in some cases because he asked the question, Jake left. What's the difference between while and because? That's what I'm asking.
The because is the cause for it.
There you go. It's a causal, right?
Yeah.
Well, while is just telling you when he did it.
Yeah.
But because would tell you more why he did it.
Instead of timing, it's telling you why he did it.
Right. It's more causal. All right. Now,
yeah.
I'm mentioning this because we're going to get a little deeper in it a little bit later. All right. So aorist tense, though, is the kind of action is undefined. It's called the perfective. It's something that's just not defined. And so generally we would put it in our past tense and something that would come after the action of the main verb. And so we would generally say after. After Jake's internet failed, we talked about the aorist tense, right? So so time is relative to the main verb, and the present tense of the participle helps define when it's relative to the main verb. In the aorist tense of the participle, it helps define when it's relative to the main verb, right? It's relative to an undefined action, but time is relative to after the action of the main verb. And the perfect tense we'll get more into next week. Basically, like the perfect tense or the it's called a combinative action. Basically, as we do with the perfect tense, right? We have a completed action and ongoing results, and completed action and ongoing results in the perfect tense will the participles perfect tense works the same way. It's combining really the present or the imperfective ongoing kind of action, or so start. It's combining the past or the undefined action with the present ongoing kind of action, and so it's called combinative. All right, we'll do more about that later. I wanted to just highlight that, and of course, that's the adverbial side, the verbal side of participles, right? So if it's a verbal side, then we're emphasizing the adverbial function. We spent 2 weeks looking at adverbial participles. We're going to review those in a minute. Adjectival side is they look exactly the same, but they are like a participle has a verb component. It also has an adjectival component, and what's in between? What connects? Jake, what connects the verbal aspect or verbal component of a participle with the adjectival component of a participle? What I'm trying not to use the word. What morphological feature, feature, has meaning that connects the verbal side of the participle with the adjectival side? There's something in between that connects.
Is it the participle morpheme?
There you go. Right. It is exactly that, the participle morpheme. And then we have the adjectival side, just like our adjectives, right? They have case, number, and gender. That is nothing new to us, but we've kind of moved along past that and spent so much time on verbs. We have to now rethink some of those things again. And what an adjective does? An adjective modifies a noun or pronoun for the purpose of describing it or limiting it. The blue dress, the big blue dress, whatever the case may be. It can also stand in place of a noun, such as in the subject form or in the direct object form kind of thing. So participles can do the same thing. But an adjectival participle and an adverbial participle are just a participle, and they look exactly the same. So now we're going to talk about how we differentiate it. But before we get there, I want to go back through when we do a active participle. I like to move from the outside, the inside, and outside in. Right. I like to move towards the center to help differentiate and define what's physically there. Right. So over on the left side, of the beginning of the participle, it's going to have if it's there's no augment or reduplication for present tense, and it's going to have a stem, in this case the present tense stem. On the other end, we're going to have our 313 declension pattern, right? Do you remember the 313 declension pattern? Right? Third declension, masculine and neuter. Okay, we have our nominative, we have our genitive, we have our dative, and we have our accusative, singular. Do the same thing with the plural. I'll just do the singular for now. Do you remember the nominative ending for the masculine third declension? You can cheat if you want. Go ahead and look at the book. You have to find it.
Is it O or os?
No, you're thinking of the Omicron would be for the second declension. Third declension is generally we're not as familiar with third declension because we spend a lot of time in first and second declension, 2-1-2 pattern, and then the third declension came like in chapter 10, and then we moved on to verb or a few other things in the verb, so we didn't spend as much time in it, so we're not quite as familiar oftentimes. But basically,
just the sigma?
When you think about the third declension for the nominative, we're looking at the sigma. What about the neuter? Remember?
Doesn't have one.
It doesn't have one. That's right. The genitive should be pretty easy. You actually said it a minute ago, Jake.
Mm-hmm. The os.
Yeah. The dative should be pretty easy. All datives have what?
Iota.
Iota, right?
Iota subscript in the
Well, in the second declension, it'd be subscript, but not in the third declension.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right.
Okay. And then the accusative singular for the third declension. Might not remember that as much. It's either going to be the alpha or the nu. Sometimes words swap those. And what about the accusative? You should know that without even memorizing, if you remember one of the noun rules. In the same way, the genitive masculine and the neuter are both omicron sigma. In the same way, the dative masculine and neuter are iota. The accusative neuter is the same as what?
As the masculine.
The
nominative.
The nominative neuter.
Neuter, right.
Yeah.
They'll always be the same. Now, if we were to do the plural, I would just, okay, I'll just do the plural here. Plural, same line, all right. So the plural would be for the nominative epsilon sigma.
Mm-hmm.
And then or for the masculine, what about the nominative? Remember?
What were you asking? I'm sorry. Plural, or what were you asking?
Plural.
Plural nominative?
Yeah. Third declension.
Was it's not oi, it's is it S?
Oh, I just erased everything accidentally. Man. All right, let's add it back up. All right. I don't know how much time do I want to spend on this is my question here. All right, so we'll go third declension, masculine, neuter. We'll do nominative, genitive, dative, accusative, and let's see. We'll do it this way, I guess. That's the singular. We'll do the plural, nominative, genitive, dative, and accusative. All right, we already did this. It was the sigma, the nothing, the omicron sigma, the iota, the alpha, nu, and the nothing, so it matches. Here in the nominative, it's the epsilon sigma, and it's the alpha for the third declension neuter. What about the genitive? You should remember genitive. It's the same all the time.
Mm-hmm. I'm making iota again.
Yeah, but this time it's a sigma
iota. The sin
with movable nu.
Movable nu.
Right, and we know it's going to be the same for the masculine and neuter, and then the accusative is going to be, remember the accusative?
Us,
alpha sigma.
Alpha sigma, right, and then what's it going to be here for accusative neuter?
Alpha sigma.
No,
it's
it has to be the same as
that's right. As the nominative.
Okay, so anyway, here's the point. Well, I moved over. I didn't lose it all. I just moved it over. All right, so here's the point. And actually, this is all really wrong here. All right. Okay. Anyway, I'm not going to redo all that. All right, so we're going to work we're outside in. So on this side, we have the present tense stem. And over here, we have our 3-1-3 declension pattern. We know it's an active participle, active voice. Why do we know it's an active voice participle?
How do we know it's an active voice participle?
Why do we know it's an active, or how do we know it works the same way?
Because it uses.
You're going right. Uses what?
Well, I remember doing the. I can't remember if this is the homework or the quiz. I know for the first aorist you got the unaugmented first aorist tense stem, and this other one you got the unaugmented second aorist tense stem, but then you also had the paradigms for active, middle, and passive, and active.
So because it uses the
active was it the omen, or was
because it uses the nu tau or the sigma alpha for So
Yeah.
The morpheme.
313
Okay.
pattern
Yeah.
is going to be the new tau,
Gotcha.
and the sigma alpha will of course be for the feminine first declension pattern, right? And so you see basically the new tau. Now when we get to the perfect, we'll change the new tau to an omicron tau, and we'll change the sigma alpha to an upsilon sigma, but that's next week. So working our outside in, we're going to have from the outside in on the right side, moving towards the middle, we have our 313 declension case number, case endings. And then we have our participle morpheme that now connects that adjectival function to the verbal function, which started with our present tense stem. And there is no tense formative, but we do have the connecting vowel. So pretty straightforward here. Now, why is there, well, we'll get to that in a minute. And then we do the aorist tense, same thing, working the outside in. We're going to use the 313, which means the new tau, and the sigma alpha for the feminine. So we're going to have 313 with our participle morpheme that connects to the verbal function. Now, if you remember our verbs, right, this is the verbal function here. Actually, here. Okay.
Dave, really quickly, I wanted to share that my Wi-Fi went out, and on my computer and my data to stream for the computer, I don't have anymore. So I'm using my phone, and I can't see the screen. So I've just got your PowerPoint pulled up. So if you anything that you've drawn so far, I won't be able to see.
Okay, you can't see the screen on your phone?
No, it's
All right,
too small.
Oh, too small. Okay, sorry. Well, I can cheat. Let's do this. Help a little bit or no?
I can see the page you're on. I can find on Keynote.
All right. Well, okay.
But
You
it's
get the
still
PowerPoint,
fairly.
so we'll go
It's
from there.
better, but
I'm going to leave it up like this, and we'll just talk.
okay.
No reason to see our ugly faces anyway. All right. So remember, we got a verbal side. Stop that. We got a verbal. Oh, come on. It must be. Oh, yeah. That's why. We got a verbal side of the participle right here, and we have our adjectival side. Excuse me. That's wrong too. Let's just clear everything and start over. Okay. We have our verbal side of the participle right here. We have our adjectival side of the participle right there. And then connecting the two is the participle morpheme. We already talked about the 313 with it's going to use the new tau for the third declension, and the first declension, the sigma alpha, will be the morpheme. And the aorist, though, much like the verb, except it does not have a augment. Normally, a verb would have the epsilon as an augment, right? Why is the epsilon not here? Isn't it an aorist? Where's the augment? What happened to the augment?
It's a participle.
Augments relate to time, but participles don't relate to time.
Well, that's not 100% correct. You're very close, Sam. So augments relate to absolute time, right? So in the indicative mood, we're generally talking absolute time, right? Past tense, right? The aorist and the imperfect is going to have an augment because it's absolute time and it's past tense. The participle does not relate to absolute time, but indirect or relative time, as we already talked about, then its time is determined by the main verb. So that's why there's no augment here, because it may not be past. So anyway, that's the reason. We're going to use our tense stem and the aorist tense stem. There will be a tense formative, as you mentioned. The slides I had last week had both the first aorist and second aorist, right? The first aorist does have the tense formative. The second aorist does not. It does not have the tense formatives because the tense stem right here will be the determining factor instead of like low for the present tense, right? The aorist would use the ball tense, which is the actual root from the root, where the present adds something to it. So it's going to use a different tense stem, or use a different root for that tense stem. That's how you know on the second aorist, okay? So we don't have a connecting vowel. Why is there no connecting vowel, Jake?
Because there is a tense formative.
Yeah, well, not just
But you're
because there's a
asking
tense
about
formative.
it doesn't need a vowel because you already had the
That's
alpha.
right, because the tense formative already has the vowel. It doesn't need one for pronunciation purposes. So working our outside in, that's really what I want you guys to think about in terms of, okay, is this a participle or is this just a verb? What kind of verb is it? By working outside in, you can try to figure those things out. It's like putting the puzzle together, all right? Same thing with the passive. I'm not going to go through for time's sake the whole thing. The only big difference here is that we're going to use a 2-1-2 pattern for adjectival for our case endings, right? And we're going to use the participle morphemes, the minot, for the masculine and the neuter, and the mene for the feminine, right? 2-1-2 pattern. But the same thing. We have our basically our a verbal function, and we have our adjectival function. We work our outside in. You can tell automatically this is a middle, excuse me, a middle passive. Actually, passive. There's a difference in the middle and the passive. The aorist passive, though, is the one unique thing, and two things unique on it. It's going to use not the sigma alpha, but the theta eta. That's important. It's using the theta eta, and it's going to use the same participle morphemes and the 3-1-3 declension pattern as our active. All right, and you'll see it today when we go through a couple examples. All right, does this make sense? You guys kind of remember a lot of this?
Yes, sir.
Jake? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. All right. So now our big participle morpheme chart kind of brings out and mentions what you mentioned earlier, Jake, where it has the 6 different memory forms, right? It just gives you, here's the nominative right here, and that's our 3-1-3 pattern, 3-1-3 pattern. And then here is the genitive form. And then you can figure out from there the dative and the accusative plural and the plural forms as well. So it just kind of gives you a running start. Basically, the present active, the present tense participle is going to have an active voice. It's going to use the present tense stem, the connecting vowel, everything we just talked about. And then we get an example will be legantes. And so this is going to be the plural form nominative because the epsilon sigma. It's a third declension nominative ending, case ending, right? And then with the middle, okay, we're using a different morpheme, and so we get legomenoi. There's our nominative plural form, right? And then we have our aorist, first aorist, active, middle, and passive. Notice that they're also going to use the, here's a 3-1-3 pattern. It's going to use the 3-1-3 pattern here for the aorist passive. But for the middle, it's going to use the 2-1-2 pattern. All right, for your case endings. And the difference here, of course, is sigma alpha, but here our passive is going to be the theta eta. That's important, theta epsilon, excuse me. It's not the theta eta, right? That would be passive aorist, right? And a first aorist passive verb, not morpheme, or not participle, we're going to use the theta eta. But theta epsilon is going to be the participle tense formative. And then our second aorist, same thing. The big difference second aorist is that we don't have the participle. In the second aorist, we are using the stem that is the same stem for, or is aligns with the root. I don't know if I said that right, but you know what I mean. Any questions here? The big master participle chart? No?
No, sir.
Okay, now here's where we differentiate now. Here's where we start to add new. Everything else has been reviewed, all right? So, if you look on, this is in your book. I didn't make this up, okay? I'm not a genius. I don't know anything. I just use the book, and then I repeat and regurgitate what they tell me to regurgitate. And if you look on page Yeah, page 334. There it is in the book, and by William Mounce's Basic of Biblical Greek, 4th edition. There's also in his 3rd edition. Might have been 2nd, I don't know. So 7 participle questions you want to ask. When you come across a participle, you want to think in terms of these questions. Number 1, is the participle anarthrous? What does anarthrous mean, Sam?
Adverbial?
No. Now, in the case of an anarthrous participle, it will function adverbial. So I see what you're doing. You're reading the answer here. But anarthrous does not mean adverbial. And you need to know that because lots of things are anarthrous.
Anarthrous, it doesn't have an article.
There you go. There is no article.
It. Yeah.
Exactly. All right. And so if you want to ask the question, oh, is this participle anarthrous or is it articular? Jake, what would articular mean?
Adjectival. No.
Yeah.
I
Nope.
would.
Hey, don't make fun of my answer.
Well, yeah. No, I honestly forgot about anarthrous, and articular. And I can barely hear you, and I can barely see the screen, so I don't know if you're referencing
Okay, so
anything.
if the participle, anarthrous participle,
I imagine it's the opposite of what Sam said.
right, it's opposite of what Sam said. That's exactly right. Sam said anarthrous means no article. Articular means there is an article. And so if there is a no article, then the participle will function adverbially. If there is articular, it's probably function adjectively. And so that's question 1. Second question is, what word is the participle modifying? You need to find the word it's modifying. If it's modifying an adjective, it will agree in case, number, and gender. If it's modifying an adjective, it will agree in case, number, and gender. If it's functioning adverbially, a verb doesn't have case, number, and gender, so it's not going to agree case, number, and gender, but it's going to be obvious because it is anarthrous. Okay?
Yeah.
All right, then third, okay, so you determine it's adverbial or adjectival. Well, if it's adverbial, 4th question is, well, what is it modifying? What verb? Where's the main verb? What is it modifying? And how do I translate it? Do I translate it as a present, as it's imperfective, ongoing? So while Jake was reading the answer on the phone, Sam was doing something else. That would be, right, associated with the main verb in the same time. But if it's more aorist tense, it's going to be more perfective, undefined, but it's time related to the verb. The main verb will be more like after Jake was looking at his phone, Sam did something else, kind of thing. So you want to understand what it's modifying, what's the main verb, and then you're thinking about, okay, how is it modifying, right? What's it modifying? Now how? Temporal, time-based, causal, because, maybe temporal is after, all this kind of stuff. Now, if it's functioning adjectively, then it's either going to function like an adjective does. You're going to attribute something to the noun it's modifying. So you need to find out, well, what's it modifying? What noun is it modifying? Well, that's where case, number, and gender comes in. And then you're going to basically, well, it's modifying another noun, and you're going to say, well, the one who, or that which, and basically it'd be something of that nature, or not the one who, or Jake, who lost his internet connection on his computer, came back on the phone. Or Jake, who lost his. So that would be more attributive, defining who Jake is. Now, if it's functioned substantively, just like an adjective does, it would now basically function as the subject or the object. Jake, or excuse me, not Jake, we'll say the one who lost his computer internet came back in on the phone. I don't need to use Jake's name again because, basically I'm saying it's the one who did it. Well, that had to have been Jake. So our third and fourth question directly relate adverbial, find the verb it's modifying, then figure out how it's modifying it, temporal, causal, whatever the case may be. We're going to look at that next. Or if it's not adverbial, it's adjectival. How do I know the difference? Adverbial is going to typically be an arthrist without an article. Typically, always. Articular or adjectival will be articular, and it is most likely then functioning adjectively, either attributing to a noun or a pronoun, or standing in as a noun as a substantive. Now, the fifth question is aspect. We've talked about aspect over and over again, right? If it has a present tense, it's going to be really the kind of aspect is imperfective aspect. That means we're going to put a continuous. We'll typically use that participle as an ing ending. If the aspect of the tense is aorist, well, typically it's an undefined aspect, meaning it's perfective aspect, and we'll typically associate it with the past because we're just not good with that in English, and we'll put an ed generally. Perfect aspect is combinative, and we'll talk about that next week. What voice is it using? Active, middle, or passive? And what is the meaning of the participle, the definition of the word? And then we'll apply. That's how we get our translation. 7 questions you ask. The biggest thing this does is help us figure out the difference between adverbial and adjectival, and then how we translate it. Okay, that's what that chart is really intended to do. For me, this chart was a lifesaver to start thinking about. Okay, I put participles in this category, or I put them in this category. Well, let me correct something here. This number 5 aspect stuff. This relates to all participles. More or less, just because this is underneath here doesn't mean it replaces the adjective only. Okay, that's not what it's intending to do. So,
okay,
representative.
Yeah.
Okay, that's why I got this line across here.
Okay.
All right. Well, that's why he's got the line across there. I won't take credit for that.
That just goes along with like aspect, or is perfect, present, imperfect.
Right, exactly. All right, so let's ask the question, how do you know if it's adjectival or adverbial participle? Well, adverbial is going to be a narthus. That's without the article, right? And the note here says it agrees in case, number, and gender, but that's not really true. It can't agree with case, number, and gender because the verb doesn't have a case, number, or gender. But the thrust of the meaning is against the verb. You got to find the main verb. You always have to find the main verb, especially if it's adverbial, you have to find the main verb. And we typically would translate ing ending for that participle, and would generally use helping words like while or after or because, and several others. And I'm going to show you a few anyway here, okay? If it's functioning adjectively, it's probably going to have an article. And there, case, number, and gender really matters, and may or may not have ing. If it's functioning substantive, in other words, as the object or the subject, case, number, and gender will actually give us whether it's the nominative, the subject, or the dative, or the accusative, or the direct object kind of thing. All right, does this make sense so far? Are we okay? All right, 2 nods. Now, I want to go beyond basics of biblical grammar and go a little deeper with the adverbial participle. And it's really kind of true with most adverbs anyway, but especially the adverbial participle, right? When you think about how the participle, you want to think about how it relates to the main verb. It's time related, or is it time related, or is it some other relationship? And there are several different kind of relationships the participle as an adverbial, verbally functioning, can relate to that main verb. It can relate temporal, that's time-based, right? It can relate causal, that's a reason-based. It can relate conditional, that's a condition, if this, then that. It can relate what's called relate concessive, meaning it contrasts, well, this, then that. So some contrast, or if although, or even though is how I'll get to that. If it's more purposeful, it can relate to purpose, to finding a goal. For what purpose did that occur? It can relate typically means or manner. Means would be how it's done. Manner is more the way it's done. There's a nuanced difference between the two, but generally speaking, means is going to emphasize by what means was it done, what's the instrument that caused it, that enabled it to occur. So by, through, or by what means of. and where manner, we'll talk about the way it's done or how it's done, as in a given manner. For example, or results would be another way, and it could be more. The result would be like an outcome, very similar to goal, right? Purpose and result do have a lot of combination that relates, so if it's temporal, we typically say, well, having finished his work, he rested. Rested is the main verb. So having finished, there's our participle. Having finished his work, actually, yeah, I think that's it. He rested. So it's occurs at the same time. And because he was tired, he slept. There's causal. Conditional. If you study hard, you will pass. Concessive is more contrast. Although knowing the risk, he went ahead anyway. Purposeful goal. He left in order. Why? In order to find help. The mean, she solved the problem by thinking carefully. Manner, right? He spoke as one having authority. That's the manner how he spoke. All right. Here's the more of the instrument of how of what by what means it was done, and the result would be more like he ran fast so that he won the race. I don't. You're not going to get tested on this. I don't expect you to memorize it. I just expect you to understand the overall concept. When a participle is functioning adverbially, it does not have an article. And you got to know where the main verb is in order to translate that participle. Now, you may know the meaning of the participle, but you still can't translate it until you know the main verb. And then when you connect it to it, conceptually connect it to the main verb, you want to be able to make that connection. Well, how is it functioning in relationship to that main verb? Well, first off, what tense is the participle? Is it present? Is it aorist? Or is it perfect or future? That will help you in terms of knowing that, oh, well, the participle must be, if it's present, it must have an imperfective kind of action. It's ongoing, continuous, and it's going to be occurring the same time as the main verb. If it's aorist, then it's going to be, if we're talking time, if it's aorist, then and the aorist tense of the participle is aorist, then it will be functioning after the event of the main verb. But it doesn't always be time. It's not always time related. It's not always time. It can be a cause. It can be conditional. It can be concessive. It can be purpose, means, manner, or result, any other combination. And sometimes result and manner are difficult, not result, excuse me, means and manner are similar. Purpose and result are similar. This is a step beyond basic biblical grammar, but I wanted to introduce it to you, not because I want to confuse you, and hopefully I did, but I want you to see how the adverbial participle works and why it's important for getting your translation, why it's important to understand the tense of the participle and finding the main verb, and then basically context, figuring out, okay, how is this translating? Does that make sense so far? I'm not asking you to memorize it, just asking you to understand the concept.
Yeah. I was also wondering with just this side of it, would just, I guess, context of the verse also play in as far as like temporal, causal, or is it just going off of how that the thing is built?
The verb, context of the verse.
Yeah, I'm saying like
the whole
in the
context
passage
the whole context will certainly have an impact on how we understand really the main verb, and the participle in relationship to the main verb in relationship to the context. Okay. If it's functioning adverbially. Now I want to give you an example here. How much time we got? All right, we're good. All right, because we still haven't got to adjectival yet. Because really recognizing a participle is the same whether it's functioning adverbially or adjectively. Now it's talking about, well, what do we do when it's adverbial? Well, this is a conceptual big picture of what happens. Let's look at Matthew 28, verse 19 and 20, right? So for time's sake, I won't ask you. I was going to ask you to identify the participles here. You may already know them, right? Here's one. I'm underlining. You can't see it. I'm sorry, Jake. The very first word, pareuthentes. It is a participle. right? Is there an article with prauthentes?
No.
Okay, one no. No, there's no article. So how's it going to function as a adverbally or adjectively?
Adverbally.
Adjectively?
No, if there's no article, it will function
Oh,
adverbally.
no article. I'm sorry. I thought you said article. My
No,
bad.
there's no, yeah, but there's no article present, so it must
Okay.
function adverbally.
I'll
The
pull a
main
verse up
verb,
so
by
I
the
can
way,
see it.
is right here to mathetusate, which anybody knows what mathetusate? You know the verb.
Just disciple or something.
Make disciples. That's right.
Yeah.
All right. So we're not going to spend much time on that. But one of the participles is associated with that verb is functioning adverbally is prauthentes. I'm sure I'm saying it wrong. And then the other one is here baptizontes.
Mm-hmm.
Is there an article with baptizontes?
No.
No, there's not. So it's functioning adverbally. And the main verb is the same, make disciples, right? Okay, and the other participle is over here, and it is, let me find it, I just lost it.
Didascantes.
That's very good. Didascantes, right? Now, we know all these participles are active voice because they're using the new tau, participle morpheme. And we see that prauthentes ends in epsilon sigma. That makes it a nominative plural. Baptizontes ends in a nominative singular. That makes it epsilon sigma makes it a nominative plural. Didascantes, same thing. Epsilon sigma makes it a nominative plural. All of them are associated or relating to, there's no article for didascantes, there's no article for baptizontes, there's no article for prauthentes. So hence, all of them are adverbial, and they're all associated with the main verb, mathetusan. Oh, that's gracious, David.
That's how I would say it.
Mathetusate. Mathetusate. That's it. Put the emphasis on the oo. All right, now let's do it in English because that makes it more fun. Prauthentes is having gone. Make disciples is our main verb. So having gone, make disciples of all nations, baptizing, right, them in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit, teaching, didascantes, them to observe all things I've commanded you. You guys know that by heart, right?
Yeah.
But the main verb is to make disciples. Excuse me, to make disciples. I'll circle that over here. And the participles are all adverbial. And so when you look at it, let's talk for time's sake. The first one, prauthentes, having gone, is adverbial. It's related time, right? It's time because it has indicates an action that happens before the main verb. Why? Because this is in the present tense. It's in the present tense. Excuse me, I apologize. It is not in the present tense. It's wrong. Here is our new tau. Jake, I'm going to talk. You can't see what I'm circling. The new tau is the participle morpheme. Where you said the epsilon sigma is the nominative plural case ending. The theta eta. That should be our big clue. Theta epsilon, excuse me. That's our big clue. Major clue. Theta epsilon.
Passive.
Yes, passive is correct. What tense?
Is it the second?
No, don't worry about second or first. Okay. What's the tense?
Aorist.
Yes.
Sorry.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Aorist passive.
Okay.
Okay. And we're going to translate it with an active voice. And that's why we're using the new tau. So having gone, so it comes before making disciples. So as you think about it, you can't make disciples if you don't go. One must have gone in order to make disciples. One cannot sit in the pew in order to make disciples. That's not a possibility. The command is to make disciples. The method or the time with that means before you make disciples, you have to have gone. Okay. Now, baptizing, baptizontes, again, it's the epsilon sigma case ending. If I'm working my outside in, let's start from the right to the left. Epsilon sigma is a nominative plural case ending. So the new tau, again, is our active voice. And this is now the present tense, the baptiz. We get our verb baptizo. And it says in the present tense, active voice, participle, nominative plural. And so it's again associated adverbially with making disciples. So how do I make disciples? Now it's telling me how to make disciples. Baptizontes, baptizing. It's adverbial of means, describes how you make disciples. Well, how do you make a disciple? Well, you baptize them. Where paruthentes says that when we, in order to make disciples, we have to go. But baptizontes says that in order to make disciples, we have to baptize them. It's the means that they become disciples. Didascontes is also adverbial of means, by describes how you make a disciples by teaching them. And I would say it describes how you keep disciples by teaching them. I think. So this is adverbial, 3 different usage in one verse. I wanted to kind of highlight it just to give you a feel for that. Does that make sense, guys? You okay?
Yeah, that's so cool, because not only that, it all ties back into, as far as just like teaching wise, it all ties back into making disciples. These 3 parts: going, baptizing, and teaching. It all ties back into that main verb.
Right, and the key thing is that the main verb is the key, right? And the participles are all adverbial, so they're telling you something about the action or the command to make disciples. Actually, matithos is actually, if I remember, an imperative. We can get to imperative later. It's a command to make disciples. That's the only command that's in this verse. Everything else is associated how that occurs or when that occurs. It occurs, number 1, when you go. Number 2 is how, or by the means that to do it is by baptizing them and by teaching them. When you start to look at this, it's really helps us to. Now, you don't want to get up there and preach the Greek, okay?
Yeah, no.
You can preach and talk about what's the significance here in terms of the command is to make disciples. A lot of people ask, what's the command in verse 19? Oh, it's to go. No, it's not. The command is to make disciples. And the verse talks about when we do it and how we do it. And
that's so cool.
Yeah. All right. Let's go to the next thing, because now, before I run out of time. So now the next question, we already talked about, remember our 7 questions. Question 3, is it attributive or substantive? And so if it's attributive, it's going to be in the second attributive position. Do you remember when we did adjectives, and that's in chapter 9, we did adjectives, we looked at attributive position. We had, I don't want to get too far, we had attributive position, we had predicate positions. Let's talk about attributive. Attributive means it's attributing something to the noun it's modifying, or the pronoun it's modifying. It's attributing, it's describing or limiting. It's attributing something to it. The form, or the way it looks, determines if it's first or second. If it's attributive, the article will be with the adjective. All right. If there is no article with the noun it's modifying, then it's in the first attributive position. In other words, you got the noun, the article, and then the modifier or the adjective. That would be the first attributive position. Now, it doesn't matter what order you're in here. You can have the article with the adjective and then the noun. Doesn't really make a difference. It's still first attributive position, because the article is with the adjective and not with the noun. But that doesn't occur for participles. Participles is always second attributive position. That means both the noun and the participle will have an article. And therefore, it makes it a little easier to understand what the case number and gender is, because that article is your big clue. And ultimately, you'll see them both. And it's always in the order of the A second attributive position will always be in the order of the article with the noun that's being modified, the article, and then the participle or the adjective. It's always in that order. You don't have the reverse order. Okay, so that would be it's functioning attributively. So you get a clue by the article and the order. Now, substantive, the clue is going to be just like it was an adjective. There's no word to modify. If it's functioning attributively, it has to modify a noun or pronoun, but there isn't one. Well, maybe it's functioning as the subject or as the object. And then in that case, it's the case that determines how it's functioning. Nominative is a subject, accused is direct object. We did all that before. The gender and number will refer to its gender and its number to what it's might be referring to. In other words, is it plural, singular, is it masculine, feminine? And you sometimes have to add a helping word. Now, here's the important part. Oh, not important. I want to emphasize. Okay, where in adverbial, time was relative to the main verb, and aspect was key. Adjectival, neither. They're both minimized. Time is almost non-existent. It doesn't matter. And aspect, too, is weakened. It's not that they're gone, but they're just weakened or they're lessened or they're minimized. So because why? Because it's modifying another noun. It's not associated with time, not directly anyway, not associated with aspect. That's a time or a verbal function. Now we're talking about an adjectival function, not the verbal function. That makes sense? Okay. All right. How much time? Okay, got a few more minutes here. Now, the first sentence here, ha anthropos ha legon to aklo esten. Anybody want to translate some of that real quick?
Legon is say, I think.
Right. So it's in the participle. Okay, what you say?
Anthropos is man.
Man. To aklo. You might not remember aklo. You have the dative for the article here, to, and aklo would be the crowd. So it'd be more like to the crowd. So how might you translate this?
Where are the articles in the sentence?
The two ha's. Well, the two ha's and the to.
There are two? Okay.
There are two. You can't see it? Okay. Ha
No, the
anthropos
screen's yeah.
ha anthropos ha lagon to aklan esten. Ha anthropos, the man.
Man.
Right.
Ho lagon, the one saying.
Mm-hmm.
To akla, ha
Crowd.
Ha anthropos, the man. Ha lagon, the one saying. To aklo, to the crowd is. So the man saying or speaking to the crowd is. And so if you see lagon, it's got the omega nu ending. Omega nu.
Genitive.
No. Okay. It's a participle.
Oh, participle. So it should have the new tau at the end, but the tau drops off.
The tau dropped off. We went through all that, right? The tau got lost.
Active.
And then the omicron connecting valve lengthened to account for it. And the nu remained, and so you get the omega nu. And so it's lagon, meaning the saying. The man speaking or the man saying to the crowd is. All right. What about the next? So this is here you have your second attributive position. Here you have an adjectival where ha lagon is describing the man. Right? The one saying, the man saying to the crowd. Or the one saying, the man, the one saying to the crowd is. So it's giving a description of who the man is. It's the one speaking.
So the second line, it would just be the one speaking. It wouldn't.
I haven't got to the second line yet.
Oh, okay. I thought you were on that second line, the ha lagon.
No. All right. Now the second line, ha lagon to aklo esten. Same thing, but no ha anthropos.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Now there's nothing for the article, the participle to modify. There's nothing there. It can't listen. It's in the nominative nominative singular case ending. You know that because the article is ha, and you know that because the omega nu ending. All right, what's it going to modify? Cannot modify to aklo because that's the dative. Cannot modify the verb because it has an omicron article with it, so it's not adverbial, it's adjectival, but there's nothing to modify. So it stands in as a subject or the direct object.
Yeah.
Which one? Which one?
As the subject.
Object. Huh? I didn't hear you.
As the subject?
Yeah, because the article is ha, and the omega nu is the nominative singular. They're both nominative singular. The third one, very quickly, parouskeste huperton didoskonton humas. Okay, very quickly. Pray for who? It's in the genitive case.
What word is it?
The third line.
Yeah.
Tone, didoskonton.
Didasco. That's
Yeah, that should have a sigma there. I lost my sigma. I don't know why it's not there. That should be didoskonton. Pray for.
I know that one.
Didasco.
Yeah,
it's
I
not.
think that's spelt wrong, so that's messed up. That's from teaching. So pray for.
Okay, that's what I was thinking. Okay.
Right. The one teaching you. The one who's teaching you. So basically, you can begin to see there's nothing for tone, didascotone, to modify. Nothing.
And it's got an article with it.
Right. So it's going to function adjectively, but now is it going to be attributive or substantive? Well, it has to be substantive.
Mm-hmm.
How do I know it's substantive? Basically, it's the one, pray for the one who's teaching you. There's our accusative, right?
It's got nothing to attribute.
So this is genitive. Genitive. Tone, genitive.
Yeah.
Right? All right. That's quicker. I'm going to do one more example. We've got to close and move quick. Mark 16:16. This is all going to be adjectival. We're doing salvation verses, right? Matthew 28, 19, and 20. Mark 16:16. Apistusas kai baptistes sothesetai hade apistesas katakrithesetai. Okay, let me just read it in English. Pistusas has an article.
Mm-hmm.
All right, it is a adjective. It is functioned adjectively, and has the article. It is the one having believed, and there's nothing for it to modify. The one having believed, and baptistes is also is substantival, and their verb is the one who is sothesetai, the one who I'm rushing through this, so I apologize. One who will be saved. It's future will be saved. Passive form will be saved, and then we have ha apis. I can't see apistesas. Apistesas. All right, I won't rush. Apistesas, having believed, it has an article with it. It is functioning adjectively. What noun is it modifying? Well, there is nothing to modify. So it functions as the substantival. It stands in place of the subject. It is the one who had believed, or having believed, right? And notice this and baptistes. Well, that's also having been baptized, functioning adjectively substantive. I'm going to double check because I don't believe that's a participle. I think that's wrong. That's not a participle. But it is
Which one?
associated. Huh?
Which one are you talking about?
Baptistes.
It's a participle.
It is? Okay, I got to
It's
go.
a aorist passive participle.
Aorist passive. Thank you very much. That's why it's got that then. All right. It's an aorist passive participle, and it modifies the same subject. So it's also the one having believed and having been baptized. That is one subject. Will be saved, but the one having disbelieved, right? Or actually, it is apistia, disbelieved, one who did not believe. Also, adjectival, substantival, modifies the applied subject of the one will be condemned. So they're all function substantively. They're all function as an adjective, participle adjective, and there's a good example for that. Would you spend more time on this? And if you want, I'll have ask. I kind of rushed through it, and I apologize, but I asked maybe Damien and them to kind of go back over it. So it makes sense. Do you see how it's kind of functioning?
Yeah, this right here kind of really lays it out for me. As far as like you can just say, hey, it's functioning as this, but when you put it into the scripture, it's like, okay, I see what it's doing now.
Yeah, and that's why these articles are so important. Now, in this case, on Mark 16:16, hapistus kai baptistes is all that and connects them, and it functions as in other words, there's no article for the baptistes says baptistes says. I keep doing that. There's no article for it, but the article is carried from the first one with the and. You don't repeat the article every time you have the and, in other words. Okay? And there's a rule, grammatical rule for that. I don't remember the name of it, but anyway. So effectively, this article covers pestusas and baptistes. So they are both functioning adjectively. I'm trying to bring that out is what I'm trying to do. And they're both functioning as a substantive, in other words, as the subject in this case, where apistes says is functioning also adjectively and substantive, and basically the one not believing. That's it, guys. Well, I got 4 more minutes. Okay, I was rushing for. Oh no, I'm looking. Oh no. Oh.
Yeah,
I'm looking at my iPad time, and the iPad, I forget, when you go through this year, the time when your iPad freezes, and it's not right. And so I'm looking, so yeah, I'm actually late. Any questions, guys?
No, sir.
Yeah, I know I'm gonna have to really look over this one. There was a lot of questions I had, but I don't have anything to really see. So
all right. Well, here's the key thing. Okay, a couple key points. Number one, participles for we went over what participles look like, regardless of how it functions. All right, doesn't really matter. They look the same. Now, to understand how it functions, we need to understand whether there's an article or not an article. If there's not an article, it's going to function adverbally, meaning it's going to modify the main verb. If that's the case, you got to understand how it's modifying the main verb. That helps you with your translation. If there is an article, it's going to function adjectively. In other words, it's going to modify a noun or pronoun, and you find the noun or pronoun just like you do any adjective. What noun is an adjective modifying? Well, it's going to agree in case, number, and gender. But if there's no noun to modify, then it's going to function as a substantive. In other words, as the object, direct object, genitive, whatever the case may be. And that's really the long and short of it, really. Okay.
Okay.
All right. All right. Thanks, guys. Let me close with a short prayer, and then we'll let you go. Father in heaven, we thank you for this opportunity to study from your word. We pray, Father, you help us to understand, to apply, and to help others to know your word and your truth, and that we can apply it in our lives and live it, that they come to know you through your words and our deeds. Thank you for both Jake and Samuel. Pray for them and their families. Pray you continue to bless them and bless all of us as we continue to strive to do what is right in your sight. Forgive us of our sins. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. All right, guys. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Mr. Dave.
Thank you.